and welcome back to Trading Secrets. If you're hoping to learn more about the Indo-Roman trade, you've come to the right place. What power did the Indian spices and other goods have over the mighty Rome, and what did the Indian subcontinent gain from the Romans? If we look at European food in general today, every savory recipe will tell you to add salt and pepper according to taste, and desserts will never not have sugar. Barring salt, pepper and sugar are one of the most important takeaways from the Indo-Roman trade. Combining the lists mentioned in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea and in the Digest of Justinian, we can gather that the other products transported from the Indian subcontinent to the Roman world were, brace yourselves, long pepper, black pepper, white pepper, turmeric, barberry leaf, good sugar, spikenard, Tyrian cassia, cassia bark, myrrh, amberwood, ginger, cinnamon leaf, cinnamon bark, aroma indicum, galbanum, asafoetida, aloe wood, astragalus, cardamom, sesame oil, saffron, nard, ghee, sugar, ivory, horns, rhinoceros, tortoises, horses, lions and lionesses, tigers and tigresses, leopards, panthers, hides and furs, Chinese cotton, muslin, colored lag, pearls, silk thread, various kinds of wood, diamonds, goldstone, alabaster, onyx, fluorsmart, and sapphire, frankincense and sandalwood. And lastly, sadly, slaves, women and eunuchs. Oh, and their hair, to name a few. Not all of these goods came from the Indian subcontinent, of course. They were collected at various ports from the East and Southeast Asia and transported westwards from the Indian ports. As you can see, bulk of them are spices. One look at ancient Roman cookbooks and it becomes quite obvious why they'd want them. Out of nearly 478 recipes mentioned in Apicius' book from 1st century CE, nearly all of them contain spices. He includes pepper in all the sauces and salads that accompany a fish course. As Roman diet was primarily animal-based, the spices not only offered preservation, but also helped cook the meat better. Fast food stalls, in particular, gained a lot from adding spices to their food. It made it more appealing, and it wouldn't go bad as quickly. Pepper in particular has now become such an integral part in Western cuisine that most people don't even think of it as being anything but native. In fact, if you're a 30-year-old unmarried Danish person, then your friends punish you by throwing pepper at you. The next one that I mentioned was sugar. Sugar was so foreign to Europe that it was described as honey extracted from reeds or cane. The very word sugar comes from Sanskrit sharkara. It remained an expensive and exotic commodity in the Roman world until the 7th century CE. Now, leaving the kitchens, Indian spices were a valuable commodity in the world of Roman medicine as well. A fellow called Dioscorides has left us his Materia Medica, dated around 65 CE, to learn which spices were used to cure what. For example, pepper and ginger were used to treat colds and sore throat, diarrhea, and even white spots on the skin, while nard cured excessive wet eyes. The sheer quantity of the spices coming in were so huge that Rome had built pepper warehouses, also known as Horea Piperataria, to facilitate and regulate their sale. Sadly, any archaeological remains of this monument were lost in the Great Fire of 192 CE. But scholars have estimated that the warehouses could have had the capacity to accommodate nearly 5,800 tons of spices, worth approximately 240 million sesterces, which is a crazy amount of money. Due to the organic nature of spices, it is unfortunately very rare to find their archaeological or archaeobotanical remains. However, the extreme dry conditions in the deserts of Egypt have helped preserve some of them for us. The best example comes from Berenike, where they found roughly 1,600 peppercorns just across the site. Pepper pots have also been discovered near the Temple of Serapis in Egypt, at Roman camps in France and Germany, and also beautifully preserved in the floor of a Roman courtyard in Pompeii. My favorite discovery, and one that makes archaeology oh so brilliant to study, is that of the Pozzino shipwreck discovered in 2004 off the coast of Tuscany. They found remains of a chest that probably belonged to a Roman doctor. Around it, along with his other doctory stuff, were 136 wooden drug vials and these tiny cylindrical tin vessels called pyxides. Archaeologists x-rayed them and found that because these tiny tin vessels were tightly sealed, the contents inside them were completely dry and offered a fantastic opportunity to learn what exactly Romans used as medicine. A few more sciencey experiments later, they discovered that the pills may have been an eye medicine, one that contained traces of our hero spice of the day, pepper. Comparing these with the medicines of Dioscorides as mentioned earlier, they could ascertain which of these medicines were being administered by this particular doctor and for what ailments. Amazing. Moving on to luxury and fashion. Incense and perfumes infused with various spices were all the rage at the time. These were wildly popular among both men and women of the society. Pliny the Elder, among other scholars, were growing furious over the excessive amounts of perfumes used by the men. The patriarchy feared that the women were being swooned by smelly men. Emperor Vespasian almost expelled a man from his court for apparently reeking of perfume. It wasn't always received negatively. The strong smells were often used during funeral rites to mask the smell of death, quite similar to Indian funeral practices. When it comes to clothing, Roman men wore tunics on a daily basis and togas for ceremonies. They were often made from either linen or cotton, but it wasn't a commodity diabolical enough to shake the society. What really got their knickers in a twist was silk. Now, we all know silk came from China, but it was transported through these trade routes, so as far as the Romans were concerned, it was all the same. Silk was rewoven and draped into apparel, and also used in parasols and stuff. Initially, its shiny allure was attributed to the sex work industry, but gradually made its way into the everyday lives of Romans. This obviously pissed off the patriarchs, and they loathed this new fabric that compromised the modesty of the Roman matron. It's no surprise that costume designers on shows like Spartacus and Rome just import a bunch of silk saris from India and drape them on their actresses all sexy. They're also often seen wearing simple Indian jewelry with lots of exotic and precious stones. Emerald, sapphire, turquoise, and such. It wasn't just the women who were consuming silk or wearing precious stones. Men wanted in on it too. Many younger men replaced their plain tunics for shiny silk and started wearing precious stones on their precious rings. It became so important for the Romans to show off their wealth and influence that lavish parties where people would flaunt their expensive perfumes and drink wine from wine glasses studded with gems became the thing of the time. The more women were showered with exotic gems, the more they liked it. And the more they liked it, the more the men in the high society started to detest the practice. For them, a woman who wanted to possess more jewels must have a flawed character. Nothing changes. Coming to animal products, we've all seen Gladiator, right? So we know that they had tigers to fight in the gladiatorial arena. Those were brought there from India, along with other exotic animals. We don't have any archaeological evidences for that, but we do find mosaics, like these. And now we come to the most famous Indian find in the Roman world till date. The ivory statuette found on the Via dell'Abbondanza in the excavations at Pompeii. We know it's from India because of the obvious Indian nature of her attire. The necklaces, the garlands, the bindi, the waistband, the ghungru at her feet, and even the way her belly is carved, making it very similar to the statues found at Indian temples. What makes it more fascinating is that a nearly similar statue was found at Ter in Maharashtra, also carved in ivory. Some archaeologists and historians have identified her as the goddess Lakshmi or the goddess Yakshi. She's about 24 centimeters tall and broken off at the top. The statuette itself could have been part of a mirror handle or possibly the leg of a small piece of furniture. We'll never know though for sure. Another traded product was Indian hair. Roman matrons often wore different wigs for different occasions, or if they were ill, or to simply add volume to their hair. This hair was often procured from either Indian slave women or temples. Speaking of slaves, the Periplus mentions the purchase and sale of Indian slaves in the Indo-Roman trade, primarily women and eunuchs. Women are described as the most expensive commodity from all of the goods traded. I know, it hurts to even say that. Roman citizens often changed the names of their slaves to something Greek or Latin, and the slaves kept those names even after they gained freedom. So sadly, we don't and probably will never find any evidence of a freed Indian slave who lived on in the Roman world. But one can hope that maybe someday newer archaeological methods will help us find someone. And finally we come to the other side of the trade, to the Indian shores. What did the Indian empires gain from trading with the Romans? And the answer is fairly simple. Gold. Roman coinage at the time of the Julio-Claudian dynasty was minted with the most desirable alloys. The traders, upon arrival, were asked to first exchange the Roman coinage to Indian local standard weight currencies and were then allowed to trade. This made it possible for the local rulers and traders to use the Roman coinage as bullion for other purposes, several of which were counterstruck and used as pendants for necklaces. This tradition in India lingered for centuries that followed. Today, we see a vague imitation of Roman coinage used as jewelry worn by the nomadic women of Rajasthan. Demand in the Julio-Claudian aurei and denarii in India was so large that when in 64 CE there was a reform in the coinage under the Emperor Nero, Indians simply refused to accept them. They were all, nah, we like the old coins more. Send more of those and then we'll talk. So Rome, that could have used all these old coins to melt them and use them as bullion themselves, were forced to send it all to India. But they were all spice addicts by then and really couldn't do without pepper. This affected the Roman economy to a large extent. In India, loads of hoards of Roman coinage have been found all over the coastal sites. And we estimate loads more have simply gone missing or have already been melted down by whoever may have discovered them. It is quite literally like finding a hidden treasure of gold. The other most commonly found item is amphora, large Roman vessels with two handles at the neck and a pointed bottom. Residue analysis shows that they were used to transport large quantities of wine and also oil. Assemblages of these have been found at several port sites and also inland sites that lie between the ports and the trading sites. For example, Nevasa and Bokardhan in Maharashtra. Arikamedu and Pattanam in South India are some of the richest sites for amphora finds, along with terracotta Roman lamps and some glassware. Shipwrecks of the coast of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean have also produced large quantities of amphora. And as I mentioned in the previous video, some Tamil kingdoms also received military aid, but we have no archaeological evidence for that. So there we have it. Indo-Roman trade in a nutshell in 2 parts. Let me know if you like this video in the comments below, and if any of you have any questions regarding the topic, then you can email me at tradingsecretswithsupriya@gmail.com or leave a comment below. I'll be back next week with another video where I'll be trading secrets about Indo-Dutch relations. If you're a South Asian living abroad and are wondering how far back does that country's history go with South Asia, then leave a comment and I'll try my best to look into it and maybe make a video in the future. And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it if possible. Bye-bye!